I'm recording this at 2:30 a.m. I just got back from a Noah Khan concert and post-concert Taco Bell. And I had some helpful thoughts after the concert. During the concert, I was thinking about, like, why do people go to concerts? This concert was, like, fairly expensive. I'm a pretty frugal guy. It was like $90, which I've never spent that much money on a concert before. And I was like, why did 40,000 people show up to this? Like I mean, I'm one of them. I decided to go. I thought it'd be a good idea. Why did I think, that this would be a worthy investment? And, why do people go to concerts? And so I was thinking about it. And one thing people often say is, oh, well, live music sounds better. And in some cases, that's true. Like if you go to the symphony, or certain, acoustic shows or even non-acoustic shows. But often, especially like this was in a stadium, there was like 40,000 people there. I think in settings like this, you could argue that it actually sounds worse. Yes, it is in person, so it's not like all condensed in the way that, digital things are condensed. But I find that at concerts like this, often like sometimes the bass is just so loud that's like most of what you hear, and I was just like, why is this so loud? Like how they just kind of like blare it, to where it's like you didn't need to do that. Maybe like I would have heard it just fine if it was like 30% quieter, or 40% quieter. So I don't know, and maybe maybe parts of it did sound better too. Um, but yeah, you could argue it sounds worse. So why do people do this? And I could be wrong, but I think what I really came down to is actually the biggest reason is the shared experience that you as the concert goer have with the artist, but also with the people around you. That this is like an event, And I think this is even especially seen in like people will there will be like Taylor Swift concerts via like in a movie theater where it's just a video of her tour, and it's just people in the movie theater, presumably like singing and dancing away, who spend money to watch a video of Taylor Swift perform with other people in the room in the theater as well. I think you especially see it then. It's the shared experience, that event, that emotional and communal connection. You are expressing these truths in community and relating and expressing these emotions in community. There's something about doing that together that deepens the experience. I enjoyed singing all of the songs at the Noah Khan concert more than I think I would have enjoyed singing them in my shower, which I often do. And it got me thinking, like, obviously the connections are pretty clear. This is very similar to worship music. I very consistently enjoy singing worship music with others at church more than I enjoy singing worship music in the shower. And then I was thinking about other connections between the concert and worship as I say we as a Baptist often has it. As a standard North American evangelical often has it. Obviously, there's music. Everyone is standing and singing, and there's also clapping, and people are swaying back and forth. And I'm not Pentecostal, but people at more Pentecostal persuasions will dance a little, and maybe even sometimes, depending on the context, jump up and down, right? So this is similar to a concert. People oh, this is another funny thing is there were two girls in the row in front of me that were like doing the motions of the song, like in a way that fit with the lyrics of the song. Which, I mean, if you've ever been to Bible camp, you know is obviously a huge thing. It's you came from heaven to earth to show the way, from the cross to the grave, from the grave to the sky. This kind of thing. I probably did those wrong. And it was just really funny because it was just like at a Noah Kahan concert. People worship celebrities, obviously. When certain people come out, especially the bigger they are, the more you like them. People will just scream as soon as they get a whiff of them. It's like people think the person's coming on, and then it's actually some like stagehand, and they're just like screaming their head off because they're so excited to see this person. And obviously that's not always worship necessarily, but it definitely can be. What else? Yeah, I thought too about maybe things that not every worship community does, maybe that my worship community doesn't do necessarily, but you have at good concerts, you have a big light show of the lights are changing color and stuff like this, which kind of reminds me of candle. I mean, yeah, it reminds me of candles. Maybe more Orthodox or Catholic churches where they're kind of setting the vibe through the lights, kind of creating this worshipful, special, ritualistic atmosphere. You have fog machines at concerts, and I know. Oh, and you also have lights at kind of some big evangelical churches as well. You also might have fog machines. You have fog machines at concerts. You also might have fog machines at like big evangelical churches, and people will kind of joke about that a little bit, like, oh, why, like it seems a little mass produced or kind of forced, but you have that. You have in a similar idea in Catholic and Orthodox churches. You have the burning of incense, which is obviously a historic practice that has its reasons, but it is again obviously you have incense burning in the Old Testament, in the temple and tabernacle. You have the prayers of the saints going up like incense in Revelation. So it's not coming out of nowhere, and again it's similar to a fog machine. It's creating this kind of worshipful, heavy, glorious atmosphere. When God appears in glory, it's there's often smoke that appears. It's kind of this intimidating, otherworldly, special thing that's happening. I was thinking too about the Psalms and aspects of the Psalms that we don't even necessarily do in our churches, but maybe always super well. Maybe some of these we do. But ways that you can also see these in a concert as well. You have diverse instruments, much more diverse instruments than you'd typically have at a normal church service at your typical evangelical church. In the Psalms, there's tambourines, there's loud clashing cymbals. Ooh, don't tell your fundamentalist grandma about that. You have, or maybe you can, but be nice about it. Don't make that a hill you're going to die. You have tambourines, you have harps, you have trumpets, you have lyres. You have more than even that. And at a lot of concerts, again, it's typically more than a guitar and some drums. Even at this concert, there was a steel guitar, there was a banjo, there was a fiddle. So there's some cool stuff. In the Psalms, you have lament. A lot of churches don't really do a good job of having songs of lament in their worship rhythm, but a lot of the Psalms that Israel sang corporately are Psalms of lament. It's kind of interesting. But at a lot of concerts, you have that. You have people singing sad songs together and kind of mourning things together. A lot of the Noah Kahn concert today was about. He kept saying like, "Hey man, I'm gonna play some songs that are I'm gonna. My goal is to make you cry tonight, basically. Like, hey, let's just sing about some sad stuff." So you have that. You have rejoicing and celebrating, obviously, in the Psalms, and you have that in your typical concert. You have, like I said earlier, you have community. There's something significant about the fact that we're all affirming our values together. Yeah, I mean, he had one song where the song is the name of the song I think is a cuss word, but it's basically like the song is dedicated to mean people, and he's all getting us to sing about this together. So we're affirming our values that we're angry or something at these mean people in our lives. We are sharing that emotion and sharing that we don't think you should be a mean person, and if you're going to be mean, we're going to call you out about it. That's our shared value. You can even get a little more ritualistic in this. You have, Korn has a song that I think is just "F you," and everyone in the concert will stick their middle fingers up. You're involving kind of the actions in this worship. And also, we're affirming our values together, but in a concert. But someone is also leading us to affirm these values together. Noah Connor, whoever's going, "Hey guys, we're gonna sing about this," and sing along, and that's a little cringy. He didn't say those exact words, but somebody is encouraging us and kind of being like, "Yeah, let's sing about this." Don't we all hate this? Yeah, and there's kind of two takeaways that I think that we can draw from all this. Number one, I think it's that concerts point us to a desire to worship. Some people, I've heard some Christians, or non-Christians too maybe, they've kind of realized the same thing that I've just described, and they're kind of cynical about it. Like, maybe they grew up as a Christian. They're like, I thought that there was this special thing that I was having this like emotional, meaningful experience with everyone else in this musical group experience. But then, then I went to a secular concert and they were doing all these same things. And I was feeling all the same things. And, I thought I was experiencing what I was experiencing in the church because God was at work in it, and it was this special thing, and now I'm not so sure about that. It could have just been this emotional high that is very common that people experience even at settings that have nothing to do with God, and maybe this is part of their deconstruction, maybe it's just kind of something they become cynical about. I disagree. I actually think that instead of us saying, the fact that I can do this, the fact that I can have a worship experience at a secular concert means that the Christian worship experience actually isn't really that unique and special. And it, maybe has nothing to do with God being at work at all. I actually think, though, that the worshipful nature of a secular concert experience actually is evidence that this is the way that we were created. We were created to worship. We are spiritual beings. We can't escape it. Even if you think, you're super secular, you live in a super secular culture, you don't think that you're religious. It's like, but you have a worldview. You have things that you value. It's kind of like Lewis said, like we are idol factories. I think that's him that said that. That's a paraphrase of him, at least. I hope. We have to value something. We have to give something our attention. We have to say, "This, guys, this is awesome. You need to check this out." Um, yeah, and so I think this just points us to that we were created to worship, and even in the absence of an explicit God, we're still going to sing about our values in an emotional way in community together. And some people might say, why worship when I could just go to a Noah Kahn concert? Why would I go to a Christian worship service? I get the same kick from seeing Noah Kahn. Maybe this, I don't know the background of somebody who might say this. It might be a non-Christian. It might be, again, a Christian who's maybe a little cynical. Or maybe, I don't know, just isn't really connecting with the worship, their local worship experience in their church for whatever reason. I think this is a good question, and I think part of it is part of, I'll get to some of this question later, but I think a lot of this question can be answered by simply saying, actually, I think if your worship at church is the same as at Noah Kahn, I think there's something wrong with the worship at with the way that there's a problem with the way you're experiencing worship. We know that, but what I'm trying to say is that there's something that I think that still falls short about a secular concert experience. And honestly, this just kind of goes for me. Like I enjoy, non-Christian artists. But there's a certain way that I connect with certain worship music and certain Christian bands that I just never will with people like Noah Kahn. I love Noah Kahn's music. He's probably one of my favorite artists right now. But and even he probably musically better than a lot of than most Christian artists I listen to. There's also a lot of bad Christian artists out there, which is part of the problem. But anyway, there's also a lot of good Christian artists. But my point is, I think there's a level where I will never connect with Noah Kahn's music as deep as a lot of Christian artists that I really enjoy, because his music lacks a level of redemptiveness. So his music has lament. It has complaining, it has storytelling, it has, laughing at the problems in life, problems we go through. It has rejoicing and celebrating. It does this in community. These are all great things. But storytelling, the best storytelling has the gospel in it. It has some sort of evil, some sort of wrong, some sort of obstacle, and then some sort of salvation, some sort of rescue, often some sort of good character, some sort of love, some sacrifice that's connected with that salvation. And Noah Kahn's music, there's a level where it just doesn't have that. You can't really reach the level of meaningfulness as, hey, all things really do work together for good. Hey, when you die, if you believe in Jesus, you'll go to a place where there's pleasures forevermore. There's life, true, deep life, everlasting, where God will wipe away every tear from your eye. And you'll be with a perfect creator, a perfect giver of gifts, who's actually even better than the gifts that he gives. There's something, Noah Kahn just can't, without the gospel, he just can't reach that level of, hey, even though you've make mistakes and have done evil, there's somebody who loves you anyway, has loved you forever, who loves you as his child, and was willing to die for you, to send his son to die for you, even though you didn't deserve it, to be with him forever. He did whatever it took to be with you, and you can enjoy the best person ever, forever. You just can't reach that. And so there's a level of emotion that you just kind of can't quite tap into because of that. And I think a lot of you who may know some very good worship music, hymns, just Christian songs in general, have probably had experiences like that. So again, I think it actually, this secular concert experience actually can't match really good worship music. A little side note too on people will complain that worship music is manipulative in the same way that the secular concert experience is manipulative, and they kind of see that as a problem. I think we need to think a little more carefully about that. I wrote a paper on musical prophecy in Chronicles for school, and it kind of got me thinking about this. It's actually fine to be manipulated through music in worship. That's actually the point of why we have music, and um, musical instruments, even just singing different notes, singing in a major key, singing in a minor key. All of this has the impact of making us feel certain emotions that we wouldn't if we were just talking. And that's actually a good gift from God that He's given so that we can lament and we can sing a song in a minor key and just feel extra sad about it. And that helps us actually bring out those emotions and express them to God in a way that honors Him. And we can sing really happy, upbeat, rambunctious, loud, crazy songs because that's what better way to celebrate than with like 10 different instruments at the same time. Bands like old King's Kaleidoscope Music does a great job of that. And it's actually fine. That's actually God's design for music. I would compare this with a preacher. A preacher, preachers will get louder when they really want to make their point. Sometimes they'll get quieter to kind of draw back, to have different dynamics so you're still interested in what they're saying. They'll maybe pause. They'll have a pregnant pause so that you stop and pay attention to what they're saying. They might, tell a joke or a story to kind of get your attention back. They're doing all these things to manipulate your emotions, your mind, your attention span. And there's nothing wrong with that. Don't misunderstand me. Manipulation is just, hey, I'm going to do a thing and it'll change some part of you. It'll impact you in some way. It'll change your emotion, the way you feel, the way you think, whatever. That's fine. But when we talk about manipulation in culture or in like psychology or things like that, what we usually mean is somebody is trying to trick you, deceive you, or change you in a way that is against your wishes, against your desires, against your best interests. And that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm just talking about impacting people sometimes subtly through different things like a piano chord or things like that. The problem, so it's fine, I think preachers shouldn't typically just be monotone. The problem is if the preacher's dynamics and the way he's changing his voice, all that is just really covering up bad preaching without any substance or meaning or truth behind it. Kind of like the joke of the preacher who just he has circled in his sermon notes, bad point, preach louder, to kind of cover up his inferior preaching. And it's also bad if somebody's a preacher's manipulating you, or a musician is trying to manipulate you in a deceitful way that is against your best interest, that is to hurt you, that is to get something from you to benefit them and not you necessarily, which obviously preachers, worship leaders many have been guilty of that. So not covering that up or denying that. And I think it's also important as well in terms of emotional manipulation I think it's just good to understand emotionalism and what that is. To recognize that, maybe I'm feeling an emotion and I need to recognize that is partially because this is a worshipful musical time where emotions get stirred up, but that doesn't necessarily mean like you can counterfeit a spiritual experience through music with very little substance, or maybe you're not actually really believing the music. I don't know. I don't want to get you to doubt that, but maybe the music's really shallow. Maybe you need to recognize that Christianity is more than about emotions and experiences and enjoying a time of worship, yeah, that's good, but are you actually changing? Is your heart changing as a person? And are you experiencing and receiving the goodness of God's love in your life? Yeah, are you being transformed? Yeah, so again, is there substance in what's actually happening? And yeah, are we just substituting style for substance? Yeah, I think that's what people are kind of thinking and trying to get at when they're talking about manipulation through music. Anyway, my second takeaway, I digressed a little there maybe. My first takeaway was that concerts point us to a desire to worship, and that actually helps us value true Christian worship more rather than valuing it less, I believe. The second takeaway is that we need to up our worship game. When you see somebody, part of the criticism is valid. Why would I worship when I could go to Noah Kahn and I experience that emotionally much more? Well, maybe we need to write worship music that is more personal, that has more lament. There's lots of lament in Noah Kahn's music. Maybe people are hungering for that. NF, the rapper, just very vulnerable and honest, and people really connect with that. I think that's one of the main reasons he's gotten so popular. Obviously, he's talented, but I think his main selling factor is that he's just so brutally honest about his emotions, and people connect with that. I think that's a lot of metal music as well. People just feel all sorts of anger and sadness and angst, and they need to get it out. Well, they can get it out too in worship service, but we don't give them a place to do that often. We need to have more musical variety too, maybe. Again, there's lots of different musical instruments mentioned in the Psalms, and we typically stick to like a guitar, a piano, and drums, if we have drums. And part of this is understandable. Again, what I'm going to say too is worship music is very simple, and I think Noah Kahn's music, for example, is much more complex than the typical worship song. You think of a great example of this is Handel's Messiah, and I think Bach was a Christian too. I think Mendelssohn's Elijah as well, I believe. Christianity has a strong heritage of very rich, musically diverse music, and we just don't really tap into that. And part of the reason for that is it's valid because the average worship band, in whatever small church or whatever small church overseas or whatever rural church is, you want to have simple music with simple instruments that people play so that people can play it. Most churches are not going to be able to recreate Handel's Messiah, unfortunately. And those churches still need to have a way to worship, which is, fine. But I don't know. I think there's really a place for example, big churches to, hey, let's have a big choir. Let's have, let's try to do Handel's Messiah. Why not? If we have a bunch of classically talented people in our church, that can be just a really great testimony to God's goodness. And yeah, people can connect with that. And I don't know, maybe that's not realistic. Maybe I don't actually understand everything that would go into that. But you have some, you have some like 5,000, 10,000 person churches in America. So, and I think we should just value too when we have Christian universities, or even just different acts like, King's Kaleidoscope used to have 10 different band members, 10 different instruments. And it was a beautiful thing. So yeah, we can create sort of this transcendent experience. We can use, I'm not against incense. I'm not against fog machines. I'm not against colors. There's some Christian traditions that have tried to limit things like that. Certain versions of Presbyterians and other groups, I think Primitive Baptists as well, have said, different groups have said things like, well, those like instruments is for people who lack faith. In the New Testament, you really just have singing. So now we have stronger faith. We don't need to see. We have faith. So the seeing is the instruments that kindle your emotions. Again, I don't know. I think, I don't know. I think I probably would just have some different theological and hermeneutical assumptions from people who would argue that. I think I feel perfectly fine saying, hey, this is what the Psalms do. I think we can and should do it too if we can. So yeah, anyway, that's my point. Yeah, God is good.